Hi, Abe.
Hello there. How are you?
Thank God, all good. All good.
Are you still teaching?
Yes,
Where
yes,
do you
yes,
teach?
yes. UCLA.
Uh-huh.
I'm a professor in my field, which is kidneys, nephrology.
Nephrology. You're a
Yeah.
nephrologist by trade,
Yes,
by
by trade.
profession?
Yeah. What I've done is I work probably about half time, so I do about 20 hours, which gives me some flexibility to also have time for learning, getting to shul like I want to, which
My son-in-law's a nephrologist
where
in Oakville, Ontario,
oh, very
in
cool.
Canada.
Yeah. There's a real problem. In fact, one of the things that I'm investigating is ideas to help enhance interest from people to start re re-participating in the field of nephrology.
Are you getting involved in any of the transplants?
Of course, we deal with transplant. We don't do transplant. We manage transplant. So we manage the evaluation of patients who want the transplant, and then we evaluate donors if they have a living donor. We do all of that stuff, and then obviously we follow the patient after the
So
transplant.
so you're not involved with renewal or anything?
I'm not. I've been involved peripherally with renewal in terms of previously working with them. At the time that I was working with them, the interest locally was really challenged. We couldn't get UCLA interested
Right, right,
in
right.
participating.
Well, they're
I
coming
spoke
around a
many.
little bit.
Yeah, you know what? The problem is that they're struggling with what I call their woke agenda, and the woke agenda is completely antagonized by this. So that's the problem.
Yeah, yeah.
How are you involved with that
So
with
my
renewal?
wife's a donor, and
Very interesting. Very cool.
yeah, yeah.
That's
So
great.
yeah, so she's already brought on two or three others who have
That's
decided to do.
wonderful.
Yeah, for sure.
What's going on, Seb? I'm teaching, but am I helping you tomorrow? No,
Can you call back?
I'll
an
call you. Can I
hour?
call you afterwards? I'll call you back.
Okay, hi, what page are we on?
233.
234, actually.
Okay, 234. Turn the page.
Three. Oh, women.
Yes, women. This famous sugya, women in Tfilas Musaf. Yeah. Are women obligated to daven Musaf? Based on the comments of Tosfos above, some Achronim determined that women are exempt from Musaf. Tosfos, we discussed that it's based on the Korban Musaf. And as Tosfos explained, as opposed to, for example, Chakras and Mincha, where we said it's related to not only to the Korbanos, but also that the Avos, we said that Avram was Mesakin Chakris, Yitzchak was Mesakin Mincha, Yaakov was Mesakin Ma'ariv. So besides the reason of the Korbanos, we had the Avos, but by Musaf, it's only related to the Korban. Musaf is recited exclusively in lieu of the Musaf. It was not established to function as an appeal for mercy, like other tefillas, which we call rachmi, where we ask for health, we ask for wisdom, all the things that we ask for in Shemona Esrei. Therefore, it would seem Musaf is only brought on certain days of the year. It's brought on Shabbos, it's brought on Rosh Chodesh, it's brought on Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, the Gimel Regalim, but it's not brought every day. Therefore, it qualifies as a mitzvah saseh shazman grama. It's a time-bound mitzvah, and women are exempt from those. Rav Yechezkel Landau, the Noida B'Yehuda. The Noida B'Yehuda is known as the Noida B'Yehuda in his Shilas and Shuvas responsa storm, but he was known as the Tzlach in his commentary on Gemara. So the Tzlach says, "Lachein ani omer shekivnu b'ma she'ani mistapik in tfilas musafin noeges b'noshim." I am in doubt if tfilas musaf is davened by women. Sharehi mitzvah saseh man grama. The avshat tefillah ein min haTorah rak M'Rabanan. He points out that the whole concept of tefillah we've determined is rabbinic, but harei l'dasa toisves gam b'mitzvahs Rabbanan shazman grama nashim pturos. There is no difference between midaraisa or midrabanan. If it's a mitzvah tied to time, then women are potter. It's only shabbat tefillah chayvinu rabbanan kiva derachmininu. Like women need to ask for mercy, for health, and the things they need. So our rabbis said that women have a connection to tefillah. But hainu b'shlosh tefillas hakvus b'chol yom. That's the 3 tefillahs that are davened every day: Shachris, Mincha, and Ma'ariv. Va'afilu b'Shabbos v'Yontif she'em rak shvach. Now, we don't ask ata choinin ladam das and refainu. We don't ask for those things on Shabbos and Yontif, and that the Amida, the Shemona Esrei, is a praise. Mikol makom kivin b'chol rachmininu. But since the davening Shachris, Mincha, Ma'ariv during the week is we ask for things. Lo chilku bein Shabbos v'Yontif. They didn't make a difference between Shabbos and Yontif in the other days of the week. K'mo shekasav Rabbeinu Yonah kan le'inyan tashlumim b'tefillah shachrea. For example, if you miss a certain tefillah, you have tashlumim. Aval tefillah she'einena rachmi. Stuff, according to all opinions, has nothing to do with rachmi. It's not mercy. So there's no tashlumin if you miss musaf. And it's purely a mitzvah saseh derabbanan dashman grama. Vadai the noshim turus l'dasa toisvis. At least according to Toisvis, that said musaf sort of is a standalone, not connected to the other tefillas. Women would be potter. Rabbi Akiva Eiger adds another reason to exempt. Women are not required to contribute to machzis hashekel, which are used to buy the communal offerings in the Beis Hamikdash, including the korban musaf. Thus, the musaf is not their offering. L'chor nira denoshim beturos mitfilas musaf. Kiva denoshim loyu shoklim. Women did not give the machzis hashekel. Ein lehem chelik b'korbanos tzibur. The communal offerings are bought. That's one of the reasons why we give machzis hashekel, to buy the communal offerings, the daily tamid and the musaf. And therefore, since women are not obligated to bring that, they're not obligated in the musaf. V'chein mashma b'psamim rosh. But
what's the Psamim Rosh? That's interesting. That's a fraud.
Right. The Psamim Rosh was a fraudulent forgery by somebody that claimed to be writing Piskei HaRosh. That is the Rosh, who was a Rishon, that later on, I think it was in the 18th century that they found, well, no, it's got to be earlier than that, because Rabbi Akiva Eiger died already by the 1800s. But Rabbi Akiva Eiger didn't know that the Psamim Rosh was a forgery, Yaakov.
Yeah, but I'm surprised that the Tzurba quotes him citing a forgery.
No,
Questions on Rabbi Akiva Eiger.
no, but Tzurba is quoting Rabbi Akiva Eiger.
Okay.
And in that remember, for that generation, they thought the Psamim Rosh was a newly discovered work of the Rosh. It was a sensation. Then, of course, academic research showed that there were discrepancies. There were things also, crazy things in the Psamim Rosh. Very interesting that they included it. Now, as explained, Rav Yitzchak Elchanan Spector. So, who is Rav Yitzchak Elchanan Spector? So, of course, Yeshiva University is known as Yeshivas Rav Yitzchak Elchanan. It's named after the great Gadol, Rav Yitzchak Elchanan Spector, who was a Lithuanian Rav from, the 1850s till the year 2000, or let's say 1890s, was the Posek Hador, just like the Chassam Sofer, and up until he died in 1839. And he was recognized by the whole world. All the shilas came to the Chassam Sofer. He died, and really the next world-renowned Posek was Rav Yitzchak Elchanan Spector. And he agreed to the Heter Mechira in 1888 when they first needed to buy land during the first Shemitah. I mean, there was a Shemitah in 1882, but there was a malarial outbreak in Petach Tikva. So all the inhabitants fled. So they really weren't working the land. So the first time in 1888, you already now had settlements, Rishon LeZion, Zichron Yaakov, the Rothschild family had implanted colonists. And Rav Yitzchak Elchanan Spector, although he wasn't, he was a Chovevei Tzion. He was like Shmuel Moliver, Rav Yitzchak Kalsher, all these great Rabbanim prior to Herzl, when political Zionism came on the scene, they were lovers of Zion. And they supported people going to Eretz Yisrael, and they collected money to provide for them, etc. That's Rav Yitzchak Elchanan Spector has many important shuvas, but that's one of the ones he's famous for. And I've heard from Professor Mark Shapiro that there's really been only 3 people in the last 200 years that the whole world looked to them. We said the Chassam Sofer, we have Rav Yitzchak Elchanan Spector in the late 1800s, and then Reb Chaim Ozer Grodzinski in Vilna from 1910 or so to 1940. All of the shilas, at least by Ashkenazim, went through Reb Chaim Ozer in Vilna. Post World War II, we have a different environment. We have great poskim in America, right? You had Rav Henkin, then of course you had Rav Moshe, and then in Eretz Yisrael they had great poskim. You had Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank, you had Isser Zalman, maybe before Isser Zalman Meltzer a little bit before him, Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, Rav Vosner. So there isn't like one who dominates over everybody. There is the Haredi society. They choose a Torah leader, like of course, Rav Elyashiv, but he was both. He was a posek, but we've had Rav Steinman, Rav Shach. Rav Shach wasn't the posek Hador. He was the leader. He was the Gadol Hador in terms of politics, etc., etc. But anyways, Rav Yitzchak Elchanan Spector. Some disagree with the reasoning of Rav Akiva Eiger and argue that this issue of whether women are obligated in Musaf, it's not dependent on this svara, this concept that since they don't give the Machzis a shekel, they don't have a shaykhus to it. He says, Ikar Meshikosava Gon, the Gon Rabbi Akiva Eiger, Rav Yitzchak Elchanan Spector's Shalos and Shuvas was called the Be'er Yitzchak. He says, Rabbi Akiva Eiger denoshim Peturos Metfilas Musaf Lefi Shelo Yushoykles, because they didn't contribute to the Machzis HaShekel. He says Lo Nehirli, it's not clear to him. The Imkein Tiksha Lefi Mai De'isra B'Menachos in Masechta Menachos Daf Chaf Aleph Amar Rav Yehuda Hey Ben Buchri B'Yavne Kol Kohen Sheshoykel Ein Achoyte. You know, a coin can give Machzis HaShekel too. Ki al pidin Pturim Heima Mishkolim. Mikra Adin, they don't have to give the Machzis HaShekel. Uchamoche Levim, Kimeshikosav Ashar Melech, Bechein Ktanim, Kimavur Bishkolim, Dipturim, Otu Kohanim Levim Ktanim, Chusr Ben Chav, Yifter Musaf. Based on this concept that if you're potter from the Machzis or Shekel, you're going to be potter from Musaf, then Kohanim and Levim and minors under the age of 20, because you only started giving the Machzis or Shekel when you were 20 years old, would also be potter from Musaf, and that we can't be. Also look like chiyuv, maybe time are different because eventually they're going to come to the chiyuv. But tiksha mekarim levim, ela korcha muchach de'ein filas hamusaf toli b'shkaim klal. Rav Yitzchak Elchanan argues with Rabbi Kiva Eger and disagrees and says this issue of the court musaf, it's not connected to the shekel, and he says v'noshim chayavos. In general, as we've learned, Noshim are obligated to daven. They may not have to daven with exactly the same nusach as we do. It could be shortened. And we don't see that the poskim that said that women who are obligated to tefillah, they didn't differentiate between musaf l'shari tefillahs. We never saw anybody come out and say, oh, women are obligated in tefillah, but not in musaf. So argues Rav Yitzchak Elchanan that women are obligated. Tonight is the yard site of Bernie Monderer's father, and this shiur should be dedicated in his memory. It's Yecheskel ben
Avram.
Yecheskel ben Avram. His neshama should have an aliyah.
Should have an aliyah.
Man.
Okay. So Rav Yitzchak Elchanan points out that the obligation to pray musaf is clearly not universally dependent upon the obligation to provide half shekel, as demonstrated by Leviim, Kohanim, and minors. However, the Steipler Gaon, the Kehilas Yaakov, argues that there may be a defense of Rabbi Kiva Eger. Lanias daiti, akati efshar lechalik mikohanim Leviim lenoshim. Maybe we can make a chiluk, a difference between the case of the Kohanim and Levim and the women. Avalpi the Aidivadi Ptur Mishkol, even though they're both potter from Mishkolim, Dinir the mitzvah sakrovas korbonos atzibur, umitzvah shkolim train yonim. You have one thing, offering korbanei tzibur. Then you have another mitzvah shekel, two different things. Chiva krovas korbonos atzibur ram yal kol atzibur. This obligation that the tzibur as a whole is required to bring a public tzibur korban is on the whole tzibur. And uvichlalam gama kohanim v'levim. Kohanim and Levim are in that tzibur. V'ilu yitzur shashkolim einam maspikim lekorbanos tzibur. If, for example, they didn't have enough money, vayu at tzibur niskokim legavos, and they have to do another collection. Letzorach mitzvahs korbanos efshar shebezeh hayim echliyovim gama kohanim v'levim. Maybe the Kohanim Levim would have to give them. Separate, what the Steipler is saying, separate from the mitzvah of Machzis HaShekel, fine. Because of details within that mitzvah, Kohanim Levim are potter. But forget about that. There is also a mitzvah to bring the Korban Olos HaTomid every day. And to bring the Musaf on Shabbos and Yom Tov. And if the money that was collected from the Machzis HaShekel was not enough to buy this korbanei tzibur, and now they have to do another collection to buy more animals, the Kohanim Levim would have to contribute to that because they're also chayiv in korbanei tzibur. Din shkolim in achiru. Shafilu kishiyesh belishka mos harbe hamaspik lechol korbanos hashana. Let's say the treasury in the temple had tons of money, plenty to buy all the animals for the whole year. There's still a mitzvah of Machzis HaShekel every year. So that he has a share in the korbanos bought with that money. On that issue, the Kohanim were exempt from donating money, It wasn't required from their money. Aval noshim shapi yesh lemer dekmot p'tur mishkolim hanami p'tur mikra mitzvah krovas latmidim umusafim. Just like women are potter from shkolim, they'd be potter from the hakrovas atomid. The Stipler is pointing out that whenever you bring a korban tzibur, it's a mitzvah saseh shazman krama. You bring it in the morning, you bring it in the afternoon, you don't bring it at night. Any mitzvah that you do only in the day is considered a mitzvah saseh shazman krama. So for example, mitzvah tzitzis. Laila is lavzman tzitzisu, because it says uriisa moso, you have to see it. So tzitzis are categorized as mitzvah saseh shazman krama. That's why women don't put on tzitzis. However, tefillin, technically, Laila is Zman Tefillin. And technically, Tefillin is a mitzvah saseh she'ein Zman Grama, because it's put on every day. So why don't women put on tefillin? It's a special din. By tefillin, it says you have to have a guf naki. There's certain dinim when you're wearing tefillin, you can't pass wind. So in fact, even us men, we are really required to put on tefillin all day. We don't. We limit it to only the time when we daven, and we daven shachris, because the Meforshim there explain we can hold ourselves back, and there it actually says women have because they have other issues regarding their body, so it's a harder problem for them. Tefillin. That's really what that's all about. Where we know that the daughters of Rashi put on tefillin because they were on a higher madrega, they were able to watch themselves. Anyways, korbanei tzibur definitely mitzvah saseh shazman gram. The Mishnah Berurah cites both opinions concerning the obligation of women to recite Musaf, and he doesn't issue a definitive ruling. He says, Tfulas Musafim Mitzlach Kosov Dipturos. He brings the Noida Yehuda that says that women are potter. Aval b'sefer Magin Giborim Posak Techayvus. But in another sefer, he says women are chayiv. Ayin Sham doesn't resolve it. In practice, some poskim such as Rav Shmuel Vosner and Rav Ben Sion Abasho write that women have accepted upon themselves to recite Musaf. And that's also the position of the Kaf HaChaim, another Sephardi posek. Others, such as Rav Yitzchak Yosef, the son of Rav Ovadia, and Rav Eliezer Melamed the Pnei Alocha, write that women are not obligated to recite Musaf, though there is no objection if they wish to do so. Just like other mitzvahs, like lulav, that they're not obligated to do the mitzvahs, but if they decide, if they have a desire to do it, they're allowed to do it. Nashim p'turas mitfilas musafim, shal shabbos v'yomim tovim v'rosh chodashim. Says the Yalkut Yosef. V'tov sheyishmus atfilah mipi hashliach tzibur, but they should hear it from the shliach tzibur. Mikol makom im mispalalos musaf emlim chospia. You have to protest. Sheyesh lehan al mashi yismochu, like we saw in the Mishnah Berurah, the Mogen Giborim. V'yesh misha oimer shal kolponim chayovis mispalal musaf shal Rosh Hashanah v'Yom Kippurim. Mishum derach mininu. On Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, they're asking for their lives. They're asking for personal requests. They're Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, they would be chayiv. What about eating between Shachris and Musaf? Many congregations and yeshivot recite Kiddush and eat between Shachris and Musaf on Rosh Hashanah and Simchas Torah. Is this a proper practice? The Gemara Masechta Brachos recounts an incident in which Abaye discussed with Rav Avia why Rav Avia did not attend Rav Yosef's Shabbos lecture. Rav Avia mentioned that he was not feeling well. And Rav Avia sought to avoid eating before reciting Musaf in accordance with the opinion of Rav Huna. However, the Gemara ultimately concludes that eating before Musaf is permitted. Amar Rav Huna, asur l'adam sheyitom klum, kodem sheyispal tfilas hamusafim. Rav Huna brings a halacha that you're not allowed to eat prior to Musaf. Amar lei, iborle lamar l'tzli tzlus l'musafim b'yachid, v'lito midu l'meisi. You should have davened the Musaf privately, then eaten, and then come to the lecture. So Rav Avia said, if the tzibur has not davened, you shouldn't daven before the tzibur. But the Abaya answered that this was only taught in a tzibur. If you're not with the kahal, then you can daven musaf even before they do. And the Gemara concludes that the halacha is not like Rav Huna, and that you're allowed to eat before musaf. The Shulchan Aruch rules in accordance with the conclusion of the Gemara. The Shulchan Aruch distinguishes between light tasting and consuming a meal. One is permitted to eat a small amount of bread or grain products, but one may not eat a meal due to concern that one will forget to recite Musaf. Mutter litom according to you can nash something. Dainu achilas peiros, fruit, or afilu pasmut, like a cake, afilu te'ima sheyesh bo k'dei lisod alev. Aval seuda also, but to sit down and eat a meal that you shouldn't do. Accordingly, a person would be permitted to eat a small portion, not a meal, prior to reciting Musaf. However, this would seem to raise the following technical problem. A person is not permitted to eat on Shabbos morning prior to participating in Kiddush. But the Gemara rules that Kiddush is only valid if it's invited b'makom suda, in the place of a meal. According to this, how may a person eat on Shabbos morning under circumstances in which a meal is specifically forbidden? This is addressed by the Magen Avraham, who writes that one may fulfill this requirement for Kiddush by drinking additional wine afterward. Or alternatively, he may eat some fruit, recite Musaf in the same location, and then eat bread immediately afterwards, which would be considered all part of the same meal. You can't eat anything before Kiddush. You have to make Kiddush in a place where you're going to eat. As long as you drink a cup of wine after you recite the Kiddush, because yayin is soed libo. In Gemara Brachas, yayin has the ability to like fill your heart. Kamash Kosov Simon Reishai and Gimel. That's one answer he gives. Oshiyitum peiros. Eat some fruit. It's probably komo. Daven where you are. V'yoichal acher kachapas. And then eat bread. You can't say that the chiyuv of Kiddush is not on him. The harashai lechol me'at pas v'chalav Kiddush. Once if he eats a bit of the bread, he has the obligation to recite Kiddush upon that. The Mishnah Berurah offers the first suggestion of the Magen Avraham to drink a cup of wine after the Kiddush as a less preferred option. He doesn't even mention the second suggestion. Instead, he suggests a preferred option of drinking a second revius wine after the wine from the Kiddush, which satisfies the more stringent opinions for the morning Kiddush. We're going to see as well, when we learn the dinim of Kiddush, that eating a piece of cake is also soyed libo, is considered like that was your mokum suda. In light of the above, the Mishnah Berurah spells out the terms under which a person would be permitted to eat before Musaf. Pasmuet, the Ainu Kabetza. You shouldn't eat more than a beitza of bread. That's considered a temporary eating. Or if he eats like Mizono stuff, cake, not bread. Mechamesh meaning deshori, that's permitted. Today, lisod alev, the ainu she'oichel peris harbe, the achilas peris, eating a lot of fruit, lo mikri keva. It's not like eating a sudas keva. The near the mchol shliba, if he's very hungry, yachol gam pas lechol ad she'tidyashev daito. He can eat bread. Afshu yoser mikabeh even more than a kabetza. There's a minority opinion of the Bach that you can eat a meal before davening musaf. According to the Mishnah Berurah, one may eat up to a kabetz of grains or bread, or even more fruit, vegetables, or non-grain foods. In addition, one may eat more than a kabeh of grains or bread if one is weak. One fulfills the requirement of eating a meal with kiddush in this manner. So you've made kiddush b'makom suda. That which you're eating is enough to be classified as a suda, and therefore you didn't violate this principle of you have to making kiddush b'makom suda. Since according to most opinions, one need only eat a kazayis of grain products to have it considered as a suda. The prohibition to eat prior to musaf stems from the general prohibition that you're not allowed to eat before davening because you're going to forget to pray. The prohibition of musaf is is more lenient than this prohibition of not eating before shachris. The leniencies that we described here of making kiddush, you're not allowed to do that before shachris. You have to go into shachris not eating. Before shachris, it's like a prohibition of eating a meal before mincha mariv, which we said you can't do. You have to daven before you eat. Therefore, if someone enlists another to remind him to recite musaf, or he's eating with other people who will remind each other, Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach rules that one may eat grain-based snacks in an amount even exceeding that of a kibetza, which is 56 grams. Shmir Shabbos Kilchasa Rav Neuwirth says, Shamati Magon Rav Shlomo Zalman. He heard from Rav Shlomo Zalman, Zatzal, the no lahakel b'minei targima lechol afilu yoser mikabetza. He ate for kiddush before musaf and on Simchas Torah and Rosh Hashanah even more than a kabetza. Ubefratim zeberabim, and especially if there were a lot of people. They're going to remind each other that they have to daven musaf. Come up with Simchas Torah. Everybody, after their aliyah, they get kiddush before musaf. The somchim the k'moshein mavarch leisha besuka filo al kabetza v'od. The practice is that eating the measure of a kabetza is not treated with the stringency of a full meal. Accordingly, a person is permitted to eat this amount of food even before davening musaf. Moreover, if Shlomo Zalman rules that even if a person returns home, he may still eat more than a kabetza since he knows to return to the synagogue at the time that was set for musaf. The Mishnah Berurah adds that if someone is weak, it would be permitted to be lenient to have fruit even without first reciting kiddush. Kosav be'eliyah rabbah, v'huva b'shari tshuva, the imchola shliba, if a person didn't feel well, ve'ein lo yayin, v'lo shar dover l'kadish lab. He doesn't have either wine or mizonos that we said you need to be able to have kiddush. So he says, Rashai lechol peiros. He says, don't make kiddush and eat an apple. What did mean targima, or a piece of herring, or mehei minim kore musaf af bli kiddush. But if you're not weak or you have other food to eat with kiddush, you shouldn't be making. The practice of reciting kiddush and eating before tefillas musaf presents an additional complication, as it may prevent a kohen from performing birchas kohanim during the repetition of musaf. This is particularly relevant in Eretz Yisrael, when birchas kohanim is recited in musaf every week. It's only relevant for us Ashkenazim in the Golah on Yom Tov, because that's when kohanim do birchas kohanim. Following the Rambam in the tour, the Shulchan Aruch writes that a kohen may not perform the birchas kohanim if he has consumed a revius of wine which is 86 to 150 milliliters, or 2.9 to 5.1 fluid ounces of wine, until the effects of the wine has passed. It is for this reason that there's no birchas kohanim during the repetition of mincha, because of the concern that the kohanim may be under the influence of alcohol that they had during lunch. Thus, if the kohen recites kiddush on wine himself in order to eat something, he may not be able to do the duchening. Accordingly, and upon the basis of this Mebrua's leniency for some to eat before Musaf, eat without Kiddush, the Yalkut Yosef writes that a Kohen may be permitted to eat without Kiddush if he must eat before Musaf, which that way he wouldn't have to drink wine. This would allow him to perform Birchas Kohanim during the repetition of Musaf. If he has a kazayas of grain products, such as cake, the Yalkut Yosef recommends drinking less than revius of wine and consuming a kazayas of cake, and that way you don't have to make Kiddush. L'chein yesh latir lo litom kodim tfilas musaf below kiddush al hayayin. Sheyesh shomim shekodim musaf lo yichala adayin chavas kiddush. Prior, some say that prior to musaf there is no chiyuv kiddush. You can eat without kiddush. V'yesh shomim shemutar litom kodim kiddush rabba. Some say some say you can taste some food before you make kiddush. Therefore, it's a double doubt. So you can be bakel to eat something before musaf and before kiddush. If he has kazayis cake, yikadish alayayin. V'yishtem imenu rov revius bilvad, just a majority of a revius, and he'll fill all the shitas. Thus, in accordance with the ruling of the Yalkut Yosef, a Kohen may be permitted to perform Birchas Kohanim so long as he was sure to avoid drinking revius of wine. When a Kohen is confronted with such situations, he may also choose to listen to another recite Kiddush and intend to fulfill his obligation through answering. Alternatively, he can use grape juice, according to most halachic opinions, which permit using grape juice for Kiddush. The concern of Birchas Kohanim under the influence of alcohol is at the root of a long-standing practice in Ashkenazic synagogues outside Israel and Simchas Torah, where we do the duchening after Shachris, right? Some congregations conduct Birchas Kohanim during Tefillah Shachris, instead of doing its regular place, because we know every Kohen is going to get an aliyah, and he's going to make Kiddush, and we haven't daven Musaf yet. So we do the Birchas Kohanim before Shachris when nobody's eaten, because he can't make Kiddush prior to Shachris. Because there's concern that the Kohanim may have the alcoholic beverage before Musaf. Other congregations refrain from Birchas Kohanim even at Shachris, presumably in accordance with the standard of practice that there is no Birchas Kohanim on any other day during Shachris in Ashkenazi communities outside Eretz Yisrael. There's a source in the footnote about this a little bit more detailed. Okay, any comments, questions? Let's go on to page 242, Mincha. Mincha and Shabbos closely resembles Mincha during the week, but unlike weekday Mincha, on Shabbos, Ashrei is followed by Uval Tzion. This is not actually an addition that comes out of nowhere, as Uval Tzion is recited near the end of Shachris on weekdays. But we don't say it Shabbos morning. So what's this? Why this change? So the Kolbo says Posech Chazan Ashrei, v'achrav Oimer Uval Tzion, the whole Seder Kedusha. Right? There's a mini Kedusha within Uval Tzion. Shelo Amru also b'Shachar. We didn't say Baal Tzion on Shabbos morning because of Tirchas Hatzibur. We're worried about the old people, the pregnant ladies, the nursing ladies. If if the davening is taking so long, v'yitzum warachrei onram kol haseder, they're going to end up fasting, and if we have to say the whole of Tzion. I guess they didn't have drushes in their time. They're worried about a Tzion. They weren't worried about the 20, 30-minute drushes.
Well, they clearly did, because Rav Huna was chastised for not attending the drasha, which was clearly between Shabbos and Musaf, given the
I think
context.
it was that was done after Musaf, because Abaya told him he should have come, he should have davened by himself, daven Musaf, and then come. So I think it was done after davening.
Oh, okay.
Right, because Abaya said, my master should have recited the additional prayer individually, Musaf, eaten something, and then come to the lecture. So I think the lectures were done in the afternoon. But, well, Yaakov, we know that in Europe, the rabbis didn't darshan. They darshan twice a year, Shabbos HaGadol and Shabbos Shuvah.
Right.
That was the extent of the drushes. The rabbis didn't have a lot of responsibilities.
Yeah, no, I think that's certainly correct. I think though in the time of the Gemara, it seemed to me, I mean, I'll have to read it again, you might be right, but he was saying that you instead of you worried about davening Musaf, and you should have davened by yourself, so then you would be able to come here. But perhaps you're right. But yeah, no, it's clearly in later times, only the Rav only spoke twice a year.
Right. I mean, here they're worried about a valid Sion, which takes, what does that take? I mean, here they literally removed a valid Sion from the davening on Shabbos. And yet there's no concern about the drushas that have, but they're talking about people that are hungry in shul. And it's going to be, the valid Sion is going to delay them. I think that's mind-boggling.
I really wonder, I mean, I've never actually come across this. I wonder in Europe, let's say in the 16th, 17th, 18th century, when did they start davening and when did they end? Was it like today, or was it very different? I've actually never come across that question.
Well, look at in Israel. They go at 7 a.m. because they only have one day. So I don't know in Europe, Sunday, I don't know what they did Sunday. Did they work on Sunday in Europe? Meaning,
I believe they did.
huh?
Yeah, I believe they did, because they
No,
told
no,
me
I'm
not sure Catholic countries who said they worked on a Sunday.
I'm sorry?
In Catholic countries, who said they worked on a Sunday?
That could be.
I'm not sure. We don't know that.
Right. So maybe they had davened, since if they only had one Shabbos, why did Israel? I always understood that Israelis go early to daven because they only have one day off. So they wanted to be home already. Like I remember my cousin was home at 9 o'clock. He had the whole day because he went to a 7 o'clock minyan. He was home by 9 o'clock already, Shabbos morning.
Obviously, they didn't say Uval Etzion, and they didn't have a lot of droshes.
Okay, so now we understand why the Uval Etzion was moved to Mincha on Shabbos. After Uval Etzion, we say Va'ani Tfilati. As for me, may my prayer to you, O Lord, be in a favorable time. With your abundant kindness, answer me with the truth of your salvation. This practice is based on a midrash, as noted by the Kolbo. Ve'achar omer v'ani tfilasi. Ulfichach nagu lomer pasuk zeh b'mincha shel Shabbos. Lefi shekatuv l'mala mimenu. What is written in the pasuk in Tehillim right before? Yasichu bi yoshvei shar. Speak to me, those of you who are sitting at the gate. Uneginois shusi sheichar. And make melodies, those of you who are drinking. Amar David of Nekadosh Baruch Hu, Ribono shel olam, Umas ha'olam v'rov bnei Yisrael, oisim mishtos u'mishtakrim b'yom simchaschem. The Gentiles And the majority of Klal Yisrael, they make big parties and they get drunk on the days of happiness. Va'anit filasilacha. But I'm davening, ki ha'et asher higdalta simcha b'yom menuchatenu. You, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, have elevated the simcha on our rest day. V'samachti eini mashlich otcha achrei goy, achrei givi. I don't throw it behind my body. Ki b'giya zman atfila ani mafsik mishtausi. I stop having parties. Umeniach kol tagunusai, and all the delicacies I'm eating. The kovetz analis palelech beis ratzon u'shakva. See, I'm coming to mincha. I could have stayed home on Shabbos and drank and had, and enjoyed all the things, but I'm coming to shul to daven to you. Aval umas ha'olam achrei ochlam u'shtiyasam eina maskirin miboram. But after the other peoples of the world, after they eat and drink, they don't recall who created them. They're just singing for their own happiness. But the Jews, after they eat Suda Shlishis, they don't forget their creator. Shas Mincha is a very auspicious time. Just like they're doing the righteous thing, I say lahen kamishpat. You, Hashem, should do for them the righteous thing. Av leben, like a father to a son. V'afoch midas adin lemidas rachmim, and change the attribute of strict justice to mercy. That's why Elokim b'rov chazdecha aneni be'emes ishecha aneni b'ishecha she emes al zed nogu kol Yisrael la'omru b'tfilas ha'mincha shel Shabbos. That's why we're saying this vanit philosophy, because of this medrash. Says the Kolbo. After
it doesn't have anything to do with the Uvalatzion.
No.
According to this, it's just
Separate.
that's why it's there.
Separate thing. Uvalatzion is there because we didn't say it in the morning. The vanit philosophy represents this concept that we're leaving our homes, the enjoyment of Shabbos, and coming to daven, which the Gentiles don't do. After the Vanis Philosophy, we read a selection from the coming week's Torah portion. Shulchan Aruch says, "B'mincha, Omri Asher V'Tzion Vanis Philosophy, Motzin Sifrei Torah, V'Korin Gimel Anoshim, Yud Psukim in Parsha Haba." You call 3 aliyahs, 10 psukim from the next week's parsha. V'afilu Chal Yom Tov Yos B'Shabbos Korin B'Parsha Haba V'lo B'Shal Yom Tov. So Shabbos Chol HaMoed. We'll have, we'll have it this year. Shabbos Sukkos. So in the morning, we're not going to read the parsha of the week. We're going to read in Kisisa. But Shabbos by Mincha, we'll read the next week's parsha, which will be Hazinu, will be Breishis, whatever, however it falls in. Probably Zosa Bracha. No, this year.
No, this year's not like that.
This year will be Breishis.
No, but
This year, Shabbos Sukkos, Shabbos Chol Moed Sukkos, we're going to lane Breishis Mincha, because Simchas Torah will be Friday, when we're laying Zosa Bracha on Friday. So the next day will be Breishis. So the Shabbos Mincha will lane Breishis. What were you saying, Susie?
no.
Wow.
Yes, Walter?
Wow, Shabbos, which Shabbos Mincha will you learn Bereshis?
Shabbos Chol Moed Sukkos, right? First day Sukkos is Thursday. Second day Sukkos is Friday. Third day Sukkos is Shabbos. Shabbos Chol Moed. In the morning, you're going to lane a parsha from Kisisa. You don't lane the parsha of the week. You lane Parshas Yom Tov. We lane about we lane the
I get it.
Tzurba. And then Shabbos afternoon, we're going to lane Breishis, which is the next Shabbos's parsha, like we do every week.
Unusual.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No.
We're still going to lane Zosa Bracha because we haven't yet concluded the Torah.
No, you haven't finished the Torah. You
Right,
can't.
so we're going to lane Zosa Bracha
Yeah.
because Zosa Bracha we will lane on Friday. My bad.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah.
My bad. Yeah, because Zosa Bracha is still that week's part.
Can't lane. No. Okay.
We're going to lane Zosa Bracha. What all the Shulchan Aruch is saying on Shabbos afternoon, we read the next week's Parsha. So Sukkot, it's a little weird. It's not the Shabbos Parsha. We're going to lane it on Friday, right? Zosa Bracha is never laned on Shabbos
On
because
Thur-
simplest Torah never falls on Shabbos.
we're going to land it on Thursday.
No, we're going to lane it on Friday. In Israel, you lane it on Thursday.
Well, we're talking about that, aren't we?
Well, those of us who are going to be in Golos will lane it on Friday. The Mishnah Berurah adds that Kaddish is recited before Shemona Esrei. But unlike Kriyas HaTorah at Shachris, Kaddish is not recited following Kriyas HaTorah, right? When we lay in the morning, the Baal Koirei says a Chatzi Kaddish after concluding the Parsha of the week. But Shabbos afternoon, the Baal Koirei doesn't say a Kaddish. We're going to say a Kaddish very quickly. That's very interesting. On Shabbos also we say a Kaddish before Musaf. So then what's the chilik? B'mincha ein omrim Kaddish ala bima la'olam. We don't say Kaddish at the bima where we lane ever. Hainu bein b'Shabbos bein b'tainis. So mincha on a tainis tzibur when we lane vayichal, we also don't say Kaddish. So the general rule is we never say Kaddish by mincha. When do you do it? Rak lifnei ha'omer kol tfilas yud ches. We say the Chatzi Kaddish on the Tainis Tzibur right before Shemona Esrei. Or Shabbos Mincha, we say a Chatzi Kaddish right before the regular Shabbos Tikkun Mincha. And that Kaddish, koinami ha-sefer Torah. The fact that you're supposed to have a Kaddish after laning, that covers the laning Kaddish, the one that we say for Musaf. Koinami ha-sefer Torah, the Iyoimru, miyad ala bima. If we said that Chatzi Kaddish Shabbos afternoon at the bima in Cain, lifnei ha'amud lo yomru ki ein b'ma la'hafzik ben ha'kadishim. What are you doing? You're taking the Torah Hallelu and taking it back. There's nothing that you've done. Like in Shachris in the morning, we say another Ashrei, and then we say Kaddish before Musaf. You see what the Mishnah Berurah is warning us? We say Kaddish in the morning, Shabbos morning on the bima. And then we say Kaddish Musaf. What did we say? Well, there you had Yikum Porkin, you had Mishabech, but time it's really Ashrei. Just like when we say Ashrei by Mincha, then it allows us to say Kaddish, there's something to say. The Kaddish better is to go right next to Shemona Esrei. Masha Enkin b'Shachris, Yesh Hefsek b'Miras Ashrei b'Intayim. Like I said, there's the Ashrei. Okay. I'm going to hold back on Sidkoscha because you can see there's a lot of halachas here. So let's take advantage of next week, which we will do. We'll finish Mincha.
No, next week you can't do it. It's Yontif. And then you can.
Hang on.
It's not Yom Tov. The next
Not Yom Tov next
Right.
week.
Not Yontif.
Not-
Yontif
not
is
Yontif.
Wednesday night.
Yeah.
Rosh Hashanah is Thursday and Friday.
Yeah,
We can learn Tuesday night.
okay.
It's good to go into Rosh Hashanah with this.
with Sidchatcha, yeah, it's a good thing to do.
Yeah, we'll do Tzidkoscha next week. Okay, any questions, comments, or oros? Have a good week, everybody.
Shkoyach,
Well,
Shkoyach, everybody.
everybody.
All the best.